Hello and welcome to The Breakdown. Yes, we are back in studio. This is week one, and on the weekend, the 25th season of Super Rugby kicked off. I have assembled my team for tonight. Kirsty Stanway is here. Here's what's coming up on tonight's show.
Tonight on The Breakdown, where are the big names? Rugby boss Mark Robinson hits back at those who question resting players. We sit down with World Rugby Chairman Bill Beaumont. And we celebrate the success of the Black Fern Sevens. All that and more on The Breakdown.
Welcome in, kia ora. Yes, it is here. We're in February now. Let's stop complaining about the fact the rugby season has kicked off. Thanks to everyone that is watching the show. Our friends in South Africa at Super Sport. We've got rugby passes around the world. Looking forward to plenty of chat tonight about Super Rugby, the Six Nations. It's all on my team for tonight. We've gone big up front. Wyatt Crockett, Kane Hames, and we've got us, JK, on the outside. Sir John Kirwan joins us. JK, Super Rugby has kicked off on the weekend. Yes, it was January, but I tell you what, there was a lot to like about the first weekend. Yeah,
I thought it was great. It was hot off the field. You know, you're turning up in your sunglasses and we didn't have to wear jackets. But it was also hot on the field at times. I thought it was some great start to the season. You know, guys were on fire. And when you think about it, Crotty, it's early, not easy sometimes to show that sort of intensity.
No, it was hot, and like you say, it would have been hard coming off that off-season, but great to have Super Rugby in Nelson. Fantastic, as you said, high skill, and how good were those Crusaders?
Less than 60 seconds and you're talking about rugby in Nelson. Not a surprise that you were there as well, though. Was there something else you liked about the weekend? Was it all about the Crusaders? Come on.
Oh, no, it was a great game down in Nelson. It was good to have a game there. I'm the same as Crocky. But for me, since I've been a kid, the start of the rugby season has always been exciting for me, so I'm glad it started. You're
on fire. It was a great weekend of rugby. Let's have a look now at the Super Rugby Weekend 1 in 60 seconds.
A new season, but a familiar face. Aaron Cruden quickly showing his class again with the Chiefs. Rico Ioane was another to show he's far from a spent force. But a strong second half by the Chiefs gave Warren Gatland a winning start. The less said about the Hurricanes, the better their poor passing, helping the Stormers score 27 unanswered points. As for the team that's on their way out, the Sunwolves kicked off their final season with a win.
Kellaway, who's got some pace all right, chips ahead. Dargaville tidies up, and there's no one in front of him. James Dargaville.
Last year's runners-up, the Hugwadis, were also in good form. A big win against the Lions says they will again be tough to beat, especially at home. And the defending champion Crusaders did what, well, the Crusaders do, scoring 6 tries in their win against the Waratahs.
Yes, the good, the bad, and there was some ugly. It happens for every side, particularly on this weekend. It was the Hurricanes who suffered away from home to the Stormers. The results, the Blues losing to the Chiefs. The Brumbies got a good win at home. The Sharks over the Bulls, positive start for them. Big win for the Sunwolves. They're 1 from 1. Crusaders emphatic against the Waratahs, and there's that result. Stormers good. Hugwadis, remember last year's finalists, dominant against the Lions. Look, I think when you look at Super Rugby and you look at the last 3 seasons, the Crusaders were fantastic. We went into this season, though, talking about the fact, gentlemen, they'd lost some experience, Crocky. You know where they're at now. You've seen what they've got. Did they look like a team that are well and truly equipped once again to make a run at a title? I know it's week 1, but everyone's saying how good they looked.
Yeah, I think clearly they are a team to beat, definitely one of the teams to beat. But we talk about the players that we've lost, but the continuity of the players and the selection from the coaches, you know, the guys that have coming in and having the opportunity now. Look at the example like Oliver Jaeger, who's been in the system for 4 years. He's been training with the players. He's been building his body up. So now he gets his chance. It's his time now. And he is more than ready to go. And he's actually come out there and he's had a dominant performance first up. So that's what you want from your youngsters.
Talking props already. I love it. I love it, JK.
Well, you know it's the Blues year, of course, Crory, but I just want to put that in there. It is the Blues year, and it is only round 1. However, I think the thing about the Crusaders that I've loved over the last few years is they're very good at being average, if that makes any sense.
Yeah,
so what I'm
saying
saying
on a perfect way. No, that doesn't make sense.
Every team goes through periods of being average, right? But the Crusaders in those moments are very good at the basics of the game. Their clean-outs, their support lines, understanding how the simple parts of the game have to be done with great accuracy. And I think that is the difference. So you see all the flash stuff, but boy, they're just so accurate. And that comes, I believe, and you'll know more, it comes down to preparation. It comes down to knowing your role, practicing your role, getting better at the little things. And that's what's happening. I mean, Waratahs should be a good side. Yeah,
I agree with you. I think even though there's been a lot of turnover in the playing side of things, a lot of the back staff have been there for a long time, and the Crusader system is the Crusader system. That system creates those players, and those are the players we see week in, week out. And Crusaders have always had something special down there, and someone like Razor, I can still see him standing in a circle at the end of the year, dancing. Yeah,
you're talking about dancing already. I'll tell you, someone who was dancing was Leicester Whainganuku. And the fact, his footwork, they unearthed new talent. The competition Leicester is going to face, though, in this Crusaders group, JK, in terms of just getting game time, the fact that you've got guys of the flexibility to play different positions. You haven't seen Manasa Mataele, you haven't seen George Bridge in their environment out on that field just yet. So they found someone new. Will he get many more chances? That's the big question. Well,
I mean, this is the hardest thing to retain players anywhere else around the country, because, you know, if you go to the Crusaders, for example, if Rieko Ioane is tired in week 7, even after his All Black stuff, you'll play him because you don't have anyone else. Whereas these young guys down there, they know that they have to step up. So that was him putting his hand up saying, you can trust me, you can play me next week, you can play me when George Bridge is tired in week 5. So if you're a young man, the best place to go, unfortunately for us around the country, is there, because he will get game time.
Yeah, but if you look at that, though, I mean, surely, how did he not get identified by somebody else? Or is the fact, once again, within that region, which they obviously do very, very well, they managed to give them the opportunity, they see the upside, and you look at the number of players, you have to say that the Crusaders feed through onto the next level. Look, you talk about other performances from the weekend, though. Hawares, I think, once again, they were the finalists from last year. They showed they're going to be a force. And yes, it was a difficult day for the Hurricanes in Cape Town. But this Stormers team, there's a lot to like about their squad. And South African rugby, you get a sense, are going to try and build on what was a fantastic Rugby World Cup.
Yeah, well, they've got Peter Steph du Toit, the current Rugby World Player of the Year. Yanchis, he was awesome. You can see the setup here on the sideline. That was very clever. And they actually looked really good, didn't they? They're one of the teams to beat so far this season. But on the flip side, the Hurricanes were woeful.
Zip.
I think earlier on,
when was the last time you saw Zip?
Yeah, it's been a while, but you don't want to write off teams that have had a bad week first up, because so many times we've seen it. And actually the Hurricanes back, I think it might have been the year that they won it. They started off with a real shocker and
you said that.
Came real good later on in the season.
And Omen, you said.
Yeah, you get that. I mean, you get performances where it's not going to go perfectly right, but there were some fantastic performances from the weekend. But here's the interesting thing for me. I don't think you can write anybody off at any stage. The fact that we know what the Chiefs did in 2019, the run they went on, and the other thing I ask this is the fact that already writing teams off, the Highlanders haven't played a game. People are already suggesting they're going to be bottom of the conference, but you guys, I've told you this, the 2 first fives for the Chiefs last year were Marty McKenzie, who couldn't get a contract here, and Jack Debrasini, who obviously came from Australia and is now headed offshore. And they managed to make the playoffs. JK, there are no excuses for you saying, oh, we haven't got a first 5, because the Chiefs did it last year without one, a world-class first 5.
Look, I think this early in the season we're having a bit of banter, a bit of parochial banter.
Yeah, but everyone's talking about the Hurricanes having lost Beauden Barrett and the Blues not having Beauden Barrett yet.
I said that. Now, they're all going to be in contention until the end. I mean, the Blues were really good for 40. I don't care what the Chiefs said. They were really good for 40. They were really poor for 15. Then they were really good again. If they can get consistent, they'll be fine. The Hurricanes will be in the picture, but what we're talking about is actually making the playoffs. So, yeah, we have a bit of fun with the Hurricanes. My concern with the Hurricanes is last year, if you look at 80% of their critical games, it was Beauden Barrett and Adi Sevilla that did something genius that turned the corner in a game. Now, it might have been minute 15 or minute 70, but if you look at the consistency, do they have that X factor when you need it?
Yeah, but you've got guys, all of those sides have got All Blacks to step up. guys who can take that responsibility. TJ Perenara in Wellington, I have no doubt that he's going to put everything he possibly can into that campaign. That's where you can call on other players. Anton Leonard-Brown did it last year for the Chiefs. Is that where for the Hurricanes and for those sides they're looking, they're going, yeah, we might not have Beauden Barrett, we don't have Richie Mwanga, but we've always talked about the talent across the board. The Chiefs found a way in 2019. Can the other sides?
Yeah, well, they have to, don't they? And you never rely on one player, but obviously the Hurricanes not having Artie for a big chunk of this competition and Beauden, they're hurt more than others. But yeah, you've
known that for a while with both of those sides, Kane.
Yeah, well, I actually want to bring up another point as well. We talked about Razor before and how settled that makes a team is very successful. They've just lost Plumtree about 3 or 4 weeks ago. Imagine how unsettling that has been in that process. They've had to reshuffle the whole coaching setup, turn up in South Africa, first game, tough ask. And then all of a sudden they're looking a bit off and we're asking questions why. I don't think it's just because of Beauden and just because of Artie. They've lost some top-level management staff as well.
Yeah. I think the thing that upsets us Blues fans is when you, and maybe a little less important for the Hurricanes, but you need momentum. You know, the Crusaders, except for, I think, a couple of seasons where you actually lost 6 in a row, then came back and won it, you get momentum. You lose your first game after round 5 or 6, and you've got that momentum. And that's what you need to do. So I agree, okay, but the Hurricanes need to get out next week, perform really well, and win. If they don't, all of us are going to start asking questions, and that just mounts the pressure. So you need consistency. If you lose your first one, you really got to win your second one, because this is a tournament now that, even more so than ever, is more like a sprint, because we don't have any breaks, and so you've got to get that momentum. Other teams are going to get rhythm, and you need to make sure you don't miss the early boat.
Well, I think on the show this year, we need to ask some of the hard questions for people. The fact that they're going to have to step up and front up, because the pressure is on everybody to go out and perform. And there's always plenty to discuss around the game at the moment. And Kirsty, you caught up with one of the biggest players in the game in New Zealand today.
Yes, there's been one story that's been circulating the media in the last week, and that's question marks over the integrity and the quality of the Super Rugby competition, and that's because our premier players are not always playing. We're talking about guys like Beauden Barrett. He's off on an extended break at the moment. Brodie Retallick, he's has a sabbatical in Japan, and someone like George Bridge, he didn't play altogether over the weekend. He was rested. Now you, the fans at home, you obviously want to see the very best players out there, and the players themselves, it seems like they want to play. Rico Ioane, he's a prime example. He played 56 minutes for the Blues over the weekend, and after the game he was asked whether or not he wanted to play longer. His answer: definitely. But New Zealand Rugby, they have these rules, these protocols in place. Of course, the All Blacks rest weeks, and sort of getting them back into the swing of things with Super Rugby. The first week, they play 40 minutes. The second week, they play 60 minutes. And in week 3, they get to play the full 80. And somewhere in the 18 rounds of competition, they have to take 2 weeks off to make sure that they are all good come at the end of the year. So I caught up with the CEO of New Zealand Rugby today, Mark Robinson, and asked him where he sits, what his views are about the All Blacks rest versus player availability.
Well, it's a balancing act, isn't it? We obviously, understand the fans' views that we want to have the best possible players playing as much rugby as possible for as long as possible. But the reality of that situation is we just can't manage that and manage the welfare of our players. So we'd like to think that fans still saw a huge amount of representation from our Rugby World Cup All Blacks last weekend. I think we had 16, on deck playing. That would have been 19 after Highlanders have been playing, and once you take the players that have left these shores and retired out, that's a pretty high representation for week 1 to be playing. So we understand that fans want more, but we think the return to play protocols have served us very well in the last 8 to 10 years they've been in place now. And by the time the competition gets through its middle phases, that most of those players are back on deck and playing a lot of rugby.
Does the rest protocols compromise the competition at all, do you think?
Well, we understand the feedback from the fans, but when you look at the quality of our performances within Super Rugby, the fact that we've won the vast majority of the tournaments, we have probably some of the highest winning percentages of all teams in the competition across the 4 nations. We understand that, as I said earlier, that some fans will have views around the fact that they want to see more of these players more regularly. But in terms of retaining players in our country, having them available to play not only in those teams with our super teams as well as the All Blacks, we simply can't play them for the amount of time from January through to the end of November. One thing you can't argue with is the quality of rugby through the tournament, and the fact that goes on. When we look at Southern Hemisphere nations and the amount of World Cups they've won, to have all those players that win those global events playing in these competitions must mean that the calibre is certainly very high. So Yeah, by and large, we know these challenges with it, but I think we're doing the best we can to manage those.
Great to have Mark available to chat to today to give us his thoughts on where New Zealand rugby sits with such a contentious issue, because, JK's, that's what it is, because you've got 5 franchises out there who are trying to win a Super Rugby title, to win a Super Rugby competition for their fans. For me, I'm going to ask you this question. OK, what is the purpose of Super Rugby for you?
That's a very good question, and I would say the purpose of Super Rugby is to be a premium competition where the best players play. I think what it is a feeder to the All Blacks and to Europe.
You look at this competition, you've played so many matches in this, Crocky. Do you look at it right now and you look at the restrictions that players are under, the challenges it faces some teams, do you think to yourself, is it the premium competition? Are we competing with the top leagues around the world and providing the best form of entertainment we possibly can?
Yeah, well, they wouldn't allow it up north, would they? They wouldn't allow this sort of thing to happen in their competition. We all understand that the players need to be looked after, but having this one-size-fits-all blanket rule, I don't think that's the best answer. I know Mark's mentioned that he thinks we've got a really good solution. I think that they can do better, because at the moment I think it disrespects the start of the Super Rugby competition, and yeah, it's not ideal.
We all understand how important the All Blacks is. We get that. I mean, the fact that our drive to be the best team in the world, to win Rugby World Cups, that's such an important driver of our game, Kane. But surely it shouldn't be detrimental to all of the other levels, or some of the other levels, or compromise it, or is at the moment, is this why the question marks are out there? The fact that Mark knows there needs for change, and the fact that he is being challenged in a number of areas.
Yeah, well, I guess on that point, the upshot of those guys getting rested is they're rested. When they do come back, they're better for it. They're rested. They're performing at the level they should be. But saying that there are only premier players, I don't agree with that. We've got thousands of people who play in New Zealand, and only 200 are Super Rugby contracted players. All of them are our premium players in New Zealand. First and foremost, your team isn't a player. It is a colour, it is a place, it is a jersey. You still must show up and support your boys week in, week out.
I think for me there's 3 things. This year's different. New Zealand fans and people want some change. We've got that in the All Black coaching staff, but also the All Blacks finished a month early last year. Surely that must come into it. The second thing is, you know, I was talking to some soccer guys. Apparently they're pricking the blood of the finger now and seeing your lactic acid and all that sort of stuff. So this is a 3-year-old process. Let's look at it from an individual point of view. You know, poor Paddy and Rico didn't play much last year. And it didn't actually help Rico last year because he had his rest and he still went off a bit of form, right? The third thing is the fans don't like it. And while Mark's standing there and saying, you know, we understand the fans don't like it, but our premium brand, the All Blacks, is successful, I get that. However, if the fans stop turning up and don't engage with their super sides, then they're just going to have to keep pouring money into this competition.
What we did see from the Blues, and to me it was very obvious after half-time, Crocky, the fact that when you lost Patrick Tupolotu, the Blues, the fact their scrum got depowered, the fact everyone talked about, they brought on 2 All Black props and they weren't dominant in the second half. You lose Rico Ioane, who was one of the most dominant players in the game in terms of scoring 2 fantastic tries. JK talked about momentum for the Blues and getting started. Remember last year they talked about if they got over the Crusaders in week 1, what that does for their mentality. For it being one rule to fit all, does that serve the franchises? Does it serve the players well? And should the players have a role, have a choice on where their future is and what they play? Yeah,
and I think having a coach having to make these calls based on a plan that's going 6 months ahead in this first game is just putting so much pressure on you. And having all of your All Blacks having to be managed in these first 3 weeks, we get that, but it just puts so much pressure and such an important game. Could the Blues have won that game? Potentially they could have, didn't have to worry about this plan of bringing their players back. So, yeah, it's yeah.
But let's think about it. This is not a development competition, right?
Yeah, no.
Yes.
Well,
what is it?
It's our premier competition. So a premier competition shouldn't be a development competition. But I like what you say, JK, and because it makes me think of if you can't measure it, you can't manage it. Well, you were talking about the players getting their blood tests and that sort of stuff. Yeah. And you said before that it probably needs to be a bit more individual. We probably do need to measure it with data and not just have a blanket rule like you said as well, Crocky.
But surely you can manage.
But you guys have all played, right? You guys have all played.
Loads,
yeah, but
all those things.
Goldie, you've played. I mean, I can't quite remember. You're a little bit younger than me. But if I came to you, you'd know when you were tired. Crocky, you would know when you're tired, right? And so there needs to be, plus, what do we call it, rotation? I mean, the All Blacks are now picking 35 and 40 players. They are resting players. You know, they're playing a championship, they're playing new guys. I mean, you can't tell me that by that time of year you don't have the All Blacks where you're actually playing them. I didn't see anybody play 4 or 5 games in a row last season, did I? Now, listen, let's get this straight. Everyone get this straight. We want to retain our players. We want to look after them. We want to have the premium competition for the athlete, but we also have the fans and the brands that we need to start to regenerate a wee bit.
We shouldn't forget that next year's Super Rugby competition is different. The fact that it looks as though the Sunwolves has been committed to the fact they are going to go out. And we're going to a format which is a round-robin play. So you've got less derby games. They're talking about not having to go those home and away. So how much does that alleviate? And in the end, I get it. It's very, very different to when we played, JK. The number of high-level intensity games these guys play, the professionals go through, are more than we went through.
Agreed.
But in the end, at the same time, you don't want to compromise what is really important to both the fans, to the people who are invested in the game, Crocky. So I look at this and you're going, you know what, in 2021, those subtle changes, do they help? And does that mean maybe we will see more All Blacks? Because that's what the fans want to see.
Let's hope that they do move with it and move with those changes and adapt rather than just keeping this blanket.
I'm just breathing over here.
Yeah, I know you're breathing.
I'm just breathing over here because I am sick and tired of change. I'm a traditional sports person.
We need change right now.
Yeah, we need change back. Like the NRL is successful. You know why? It doesn't really change. We know what's happening every year. Same comp. We follow our team. Same with the Northern Hemisphere. The one thing the Northern Hemisphere are doing is they are kicking our butts from a business point of view. They've got great competition. They've got great clubs. They've got the Heineken Cup. The Six Nations are successful. They're leaking money, and we're looking for money everywhere.
And continuing to bring in the top players.
And why is that? Because it's traditionalism. They're not going to change the Six Nations. They're not going to change their Gallagher Shield or whatever it's called.
So one of the challenges I have on this, Kane, is the fact that it's generally only 6 Test matches at home in a year. Like, that's what there is for All Blacks. And they're across the country. You're talking about seeing All Blacks in action. If they're not playing for their Super Rugby teams, there is a limited opportunity to see their heroes, to see these guys up close and to see what they're about, what they're aspiring to. And for me, we've got to find a way. Now, I'm not saying we will continue to talk about this, but do we not need to find a way that actually continues to grow the game and keeps us connected to our fans? Yeah,
well, we keep talking about a group of 30 players here. If the fans only want to see 30 players, our game in New Zealand isn't going to survive as long as it needs to. There's Mighty 10 Cup week in, week out. There is Super Rugby where 200 players are contracted here. So we can't just, as fans, be worried all about the next All Black or 36 guys that are contracted as All Blacks. Again, rugby is a place, it's a colour, it's a jersey. We need to get back to that and start supporting that.
Look, I think we're all desperate to be part of what is a great game. We know that, but the fact we like to be confident about its future. Well, make sure you stay with us. Plenty for us to look forward to. We're certainly going to talk about the Six Nations, but first, after the break, we are going to talk to 2 of our Black Ferns Sevens players after their successful tournament in Sydney. There they are, Ruby Tui, Stacey Fuller, coming up after the break.
It will be Canada taking on New Zealand in the final of an HSBC World Rugby Sevens. You cannot take your eye off Gail Broughton for a second, because she will make you pay. Nathan Wong, quick pass out the back for Flula. Yawning gap for Tyler Nathan Wong. Saili to put a bow on it for New Zealand.
Sometimes they take me by surprise.
Yes, another trophy lift for our Black Ferns Sevens. Outstanding results in both Hamilton and Sydney. An outstanding play from our side. We're going to head to Tauranga now. We're going to catch up with 2 of our very, very best, Ruby Tui, Stacey Flula, and team. Welcome home. Congratulations. Now, I'll ask you first, Ruby. I see you got a sling on there. What's going on? Too many guns in the gym? Is that what's happening, or how bad is it? And how long are you going to be on the sideline?
Oh yeah. Actually, I just bumped into Stacey. Like, I just walked past her and she's so solid. Like, you know, seeing those hits she's putting on people, it just really, like, took me out. Nah, it's just something little, but I have been given the hard word to take it easy for a couple of weeks, so I'll get my full diagnosis tomorrow, but nah, she'll be right.
You don't know how to take it easy. You do not know how to take it easy.
Stacey, Kane here. Now, we're both from Whakatane. I went to Trident High School, you went to Whakatane High School, and we all know Trident High School is a lot better than Whakatane High School. How would a gold medal change this?
Oh, I don't know about that. I don't know about that, Kane. Come on, mate.
Yeah, but a gold medal. We're talking Olympic golds. That's what everyone's starting to talk about. How hard is it? And JK's got a question with it.
Yeah, Ruby, congratulations on the last couple of weeks and really the last 12 months for the whole team. But Olympics last time, silver medal, amazing. But as a sports person, you're probably going, want that big gold one. How are you talking about the Olympics and how are you going to cope with the expectations now of being really the greatest side at the moment by quite a big margin? So are you talking about, you know, that big gold thing you want to hang around your neck in a few months?
Yeah, well, I mean, because people always ask, you know, we train really hard every day, and how do we stay motivated? And I always say to them, oh, just go to the Olympics and win silver. Like, it gets you up for anything. So it's actually been a real blessing the last 4 years. We'll never forget it. But it's, you know, we do have the Olympics this year, and that's massive, not just for women's rugby, but for sevens and for rugby in the world. It's one of the most, you know, it's the most watched thing in the world. So it's huge. We love it. But as well as the Olympics this year, we played for the first time ever, that's why I'm wearing this medal with a fern on it, the New Zealand Sevens. Like, the women's was part of the New Zealand Sevens. We've got the Hong Kong Sevens, hopefully, you know, if that goes well, going ahead. So there's all these milestones that, and before the Olympics, that we really, really want to take the time to respect and honour. And that's really what we're trying to do. And then, you know, those who are lucky enough to get selected, hopefully will be in their team, will represent at the Olympics as well. So we're definitely talking about it. We use it every day as motivation, but we're not forgetting each little win in itself, and trying to respect those moments as well.
Nice, girls. Hey, Crocky here. Hey, congratulations on your form the last couple of tournaments. You've been absolutely ripping it up. It's awesome to see. Mine's for you, Stacey. Just looking ahead to the Olympics, obviously you've been playing amazing, but how do you peak at the Olympics and keep getting better from here?
I think it has a big deal to do with our analysis that we do on the other teams. Like Ruby said, we want to enjoy each week as it comes. We don't want to look too far ahead. We want to focus on what we're doing well, but there's always ways to get better. I think we respect that we haven't actually played our best rugby. We might have been winning tournaments, but there's still a lot of improvement to go. And our girls are aware of that. They are acknowledging that, hey, we're not going to be at the top of our game yet, but once we get to the Olympics, we'll be hissing and ready to go.
And it's like, Crocky, everyone's celebrating the World Cup, but what about having Super Rugby in Nelson? Like, how good?
Yeah, obviously a Crocky and Kane's on the phone to you already, trying to pump that up. Yes, you'll get to go back there at some point. Some of the footage we're seeing there, some of the form's outstanding. You're playing so well. And you look at the game and the growth of the game. Canada, the last two tournaments, they've been who you've been up against. Are you feeling, though, that, like we found at the Rugby World Cup last year, that teams are getting closer? Are teams getting closer to you, and could they come from everywhere?
Oh, you know it, Jeff. Like, sevens is unreal. It not only does the game go so fast, but it develops so fast as well. Like, there was a period, you know, we were only ever seeing Aussie in the final. There's a period we were only ever seeing USA in the final, and now it's Canada. Like, you cannot take any team for granted. We had England in our pool matches, but the tournament before, over in Cape Town, we had them in the quarterfinal and we only just beat them on the hooter, you know. So sevens is one of the most entertaining, like, out of this world sports, and I think that's why we love it, because it can change like that. And the other thing about our form, you know, talking about Olympics, we can't sit on our last performance. Like, we can't be like, oh, that was good enough, because it wasn't, you know, like, you can't take that state of mind into the next game. You've got to be on, you've got to be doing something different every game, because they're watching just like we're watching them.
Yeah, hi Stacey, it's JK. I mean, this is a fantastic option for young women and a career. So how are you helping the young women that are coming into game to make that transition? I mean, most of you are multi-talented, netball, rugby, you know, all sorts of different sports. But is there a process you're going through? Because they seem to be learning the game really quickly.
Yeah, there's a big process. Like, I guess a big one for us is going out into the community, going out into the schools and showcasing exactly what we do. You know, this is a dream job for us, and we know that there's a lot of young girls and boys coming through that we're inspiring. So it's just getting word out there that what we're doing is actually an amazing job. We get to travel the world with our best friends. We get to experience all these different cultures. So if we can get word out to those people who are wanting to be like us, then I think that's going to be amazing. I guess social media is a big part of that too. So just showing everyone, hey, look, this is us. We play for the Blackfern Sevens and this is what we do. I think that's going to help with the development of female rugby within New Zealand and all around the world.
Ruby, Stacey, thank you so much for your time, but also you should be very, very proud of what it is, the standards you're setting, and the fact that I know that everyone around New Zealand looks at the way you hold yourselves, the culture you've built within that team, how much you love the game. It's something to inspire to. Congratulations, well done. Keep up the hard work. There's no doubt you'll keep working hard towards that those Olympics. We'll speak to you before then anyway, because you've always got plenty to say, both of you. And we're going to cut them off there. We're going to let them out. Thank you so much, team. Well, it was great to catch up with them. Fantastic input and talking about the game and how it's continued to grow. It's grown across the world as this great game of rugby union, and in 2019 it happened in Japan. It was a Rugby World Cup. Sir Bill Beaumont, the chairman of World Rugby, is in New Zealand as the Rugby World Cup for the women's game is being launched and announced for next year. And Jim Kay's had the opportunity to chat to him today.
The one country he come to, wall-to-wall rugby. Everybody knows how the game's played. Everybody's got an opinion how the game should be played. And I think it's a testament to the success that your women have had. Well, I think New Zealand's a country where people want to come. I think they want to come and appreciate rugby like you are, wall-to-wall rugby. And so I think time of year is important. So there'll be a lot of Europeans who'll think, actually, I've never really gone to New Zealand. What a great time to go, September, October, when the weather's going better. There's no reason why New Zealand can't host another men's World Cup. When you think of what happened in 2011 when you lost your second biggest stadium and yet still produce an outstanding Rugby World Cup. Well, you've got to look at money, because without money, the game sort of, there's no sort of investment outside the major unions. So we have to be strategic. Where do we go? Like, you look at these markets, you think, well, got to go to USA sometime. Biggest sporting market on the globe. 10 years ago, I'm quite proud I was one of those guys who made that decision to go to Japan. And out of that, you know, we were rewarded. We've now got another country that people are desperate to see play. We have to find something that gives them regular fixtures.
We have to find something that gives them regular fixtures. Well, last year they weren't able to get this World Nations Cup or this Test match arena for everyone to come in together because, once again, JK, they got around the table and no one could agree on what should happen. Let's talk specifically about Japan. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about, because of their results last year as the quarterfinals, what's the future for them? Is the future more Test matches in the Northern Hemisphere? Is it part of the Rugby Championship? Where do they fit and when does it happen?
I think Championship should happen next year. And I think we need to bring the Japanese companies into a Heineken Cup-like tournament as soon as possible. It'll give our franchise another income stream, so that, like they do in the Northern Hemisphere, that Heineken Cup is an individual television thing that the clubs can split, so they can create some income. And we need to do it now, and we need to do it as quick as possible, and the All Blacks should go to Japan on their way to Europe in November.
But do we believe...
In fact, get rid of November in Europe and just go to Japan and come home.
Anything else?
No.
OK. Kane, I'm going to ask you about this then. If Japan were to come in, like JK says, into a rugby championship, how do you think they would handle the opportunity and the challenge of playing against the All Blacks, the Wallabies, the Springboks and the Pumas?
Yeah, well, we talked to Tony last year. We had him on the breakdown later on in the year, and he was unsure, wasn't he? He was unsure whether Japan could sort of face those guys week in, week out. If they have the 4 years to prepare, they can surprise everyone like they talked about. They had the...
they had
test players outside of
and they had like a 20-week lead-in as well,
exactly
didn't
right. So they had the opportunity to surprise everyone. If they had to do that week in, week out, Pumas...
the Springboks. He wasn't convinced, was he?
He wasn't
convinced, Crocky. You look at the talent they've got. I mean, the Sunwolves have started 1-1 in Super Rugby. I don't think it relates to Japan, but on the back of their performance, they got through a Rugby World Cup pool.
They did.
That's how good they were.
They were amazing at the World Cup. It excites me. The prospect of Japan playing in our competition week in and week out. Yes, they might cop the odd bad game or whatever, but people want to see it. There's a huge amount of excitement in Japan currently about rugby. Let's build off that momentum.
So whose responsibility is it, though? I mean, is it World Rugby's? Is it Sansa's? Is it Japan? Is it the Northern Hemisphere? Whose is it?
Just to finish that discussion, The Jaguares have been in the competition how long before they made the playoffs, finals? First couple of years, they were horrible. Brownie will be having an eye on his national side and him and Jamie being coaches and getting the best way they can to World Cup. But the reality is you need to get them in as soon as possible so the players get used to it. Whose responsibility is it? Sansa. Sansa need to make a courageous decision to change some things up, to bring them in, because there's also some money up there. Northern Hemisphere don't care about us, we know that.
How much better were they, though, from when you coached them, JK? The fact when you were there, and what have they done differently, and why all of a sudden have they made these strides, and can they continue to get better?
They have used the foreign influence in Japan brilliantly. I mean, the Japanese lock is going to play against Brodie Metallic next week. You know, the foreigners that are going up, you there too? You were there too, mate, you know? Were you? Brett, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, and the prop will play against you and it'll be his biggest day of his life.
Have you actually finished?
Yeah, I'm done.
OK, you're done, OK.
But you know what I mean? So they've used the foreigners brilliantly. They have a great system about bringing young, especially Tongan players, on scholarships at a young age, integrating into the community, integrating into Japan. So they have a great cross-section of where the young Japanese can play against other different talented world players, and it's making them better.
Yeah, because Andy Ellis last year said the same, where a lot of the foreign players have a good influence on the players coming through, and that's a little bit different to France, where Aaron Cruden goes over and they say, no, you must play like us. But in Japan, they look at you and say, you're an All Black, you're successful, we want to learn off you, and that's going to be good for them. Crocky?
Well, they've got a meaningful domestic competition like we're talking about, and that's something that Argentina don't have. So they have got that competition where they're building players up over time, getting better and better.
If we don't take the opportunity now, I think World Rugby and Sansa to get involved in this conversation, we have missed a massive opportunity. Well, there's plenty of great action over the weekend, plenty for us to talk about now as well. And Kirsty, we saw our first major upset in 2020.
Yeah, it's not just Super Rugby that got underway over the weekend. The Six Nations competition across the UK and Europe is also underway, and there's no way of slipping under the radar in this competition. Wayne Pivac, well, he started his tenure with Wales off on a winning note, but for Italy, I'm sorry, JK, but it was the same old story. 23 straight defeats. What do you do there? There's been talks about promotion, relegation again, but it seems they are safe. The one man making news, though, and not for the right reasons. Surprise, surprise, it's arrogant Eddie Jones. Now, he was full of confidence before the match against France, but they were completely outplayed. And after being Rugby World Cup finalists in Yokohama in November, that seems like a very, very long time ago. Now, I need to get this right because the scribes, after the match, they described England as damp paper bags. Absolutely nothing. Here's how the week played out.
We're so excited about the Guinness Six Nations. Look, our only target at this stage is to beat France.
Oh, that's the way forward for France.
France can expect absolute brutality from England. We want to be the greatest team the game's ever seen.
Taken by Lattes again. Oh, it's play on. Must be a try. Off goes Dupont. He's so strong. He's got Ollie Moore on the inside.
There's a bit of a renaissance in French rugby. There was a good narrative about their performance and we just didn't match their intensity early on. We've struggled to get there. Why? We'd all like to know. You know, if we knew we'd never lose a game.
I thought they were never going to lose again. That's what he said, wasn't it?
I don't think he's arrogant. I actually like... I mean, I like him.
I do too.
It's expectation. That's what he's trying to put on his team. And we have it. We brought up with it. We live with it. We're expected to go to every game and win. And I just like... What he's said is, we want to be the best team in the world. He's got to do that. He made the playoffs, right? He made the World Cup final. Yeah. He needs to raise the standard. I think it's good. And then he got his butt kicked. We're
reading articles today, though, that Owen Farrell is a broken man after just 2 defeats. I mean, that's how hard it is to be an international captain. And then you look at what, say, Kieran Reid has gone through and Richie McCaw and the challenges, the fact that these are the sort of results that should make this England team stronger. The fact that they haven't got, what, 5 years older in the space of 3 months. The fact that this was the sort of challenge, and it's France, right, Kane? This is what they're capable of, and this is what they're capable of at home.
Yeah, well, it's shown everywhere. You sort of roll the French up, they're going to have an emotional game and an emotional backlash, and they might catch you, and this time they did. However, it's a different French team. These are stacked full of under-20s players who have won a couple of tournaments in the past. They don't have the baggage that maybe the other French players who have been sort of kicked out the door have, and they put in a different performance, an emotional performance, a strong performance, and they got up over England.
I still enjoyed it a little bit, Crocky. England losing. I did. I mean, the fact they were the team that knocked us out of the Rugby World Cup and the fact they were trying to establish themselves as being one of the superpowers, for them to go and lose to a French team, to me, I think, once again, we keep talking about how the gaps have closed. When you get the right atmosphere, you get the right culture. New coach for the French team as well. Crocky, give Crocky a chance and then you can have your say.
I think what you say is perfectly natural for
I've got cards here for you
to enjoy.
If you're not careful.
Come on, you two. It's perfectly natural for a Kiwi to enjoy watching the English lose. But I think, you look back to last year and what the English put into that Rugby World Cup, that energy over 4 years, a long time. You have to wonder whether that emotional energy that they've put into that is hurting them a little bit now.
It did take its toll. We know how devastated they were because they believed they were destined to go on and win Rugby World Cup. But this to me, once again, I come back to JK, you expect your good teams, your great teams, to respond to this. The next 4 games of their Six Nations campaign will determine a lot about their future.
Couple of things for me. The French are actually really good in patches at the World Cup. Right? Very good. They have a new coaching staff. Some of them have been down here studying the game. Who's been one of the best defensive coaches in the world in the last 10 years? Sean Edwards. He's now part of that setup. Latins, Italians and French, when they have a change in coach, it's like, wow, I have a chance to prove myself. And so they'll be really emotional about doing it. Okay, and you said before, this new coach has put a whole lot of those under-20 guys in that have won. They've beaten England before. They've beaten the baby All Blacks, And so they are a good side. And when they're a good side, they're just about impossible to beat in France. So, I think Eddie's Eddie, and it's fun to watch, but they are a good side that are still trying to get over the disappointment.
And we look at a number of teams that have had changes across the globe. We know Dave Rennie is now coaching the Wallabies. Wayne Pivac took over at Wales. And the fact they had a comprehensive win over Italy, I refuse to read anything into that because Italy were bitterly disappointing. They need to make some shifts. But more importantly, I looked at Ireland and Scotland. Ireland bundled out in the Rugby World Cup, completely dominated by the All Blacks, and then Scotland literally dropped the ball. Okay, and they dropped the ball, and for Scotland, to me, that missing opportunities, this wasn't a great game of football. Neither of these sides will probably be happy, but this is sublime to the ridiculous, right?
Yeah, well, basics, JK talked about a little bit earlier, and Crusaders are really good at just being average and really good at doing their basics. This is no
How did he think he was going to get away with it?
Well, you're trying to bluff him, wasn't he? But I'm sure he would have had to have a wee...
Even in the old days, no cameras there, they would have worked that one out, right? But let's go back to Ireland, because here was a team that didn't quite get its timing right, Crocky. The fact you go to a Rugby World Cup, we ended up facing them in a quarter-final. Obviously, we're truly motivated. Are they well and truly in a rebuild now? They've lost their head coach who was so inspirational, or have they still got the squad that can be competitive long-term?
Well, obviously massive change, and you lose someone like Joe Schmidt. He's obviously one of the greatest coaches in the world. So it will be different for them, but they have still got the majority of that squad, and they're still, going to be competitive over the next few years. But will they be the same team they were? I'm not sure. We'll have to wait and see. But on the evidence of this first up performance, they're a wee way off.
I'm going to talk about Italy for you, JK, because...
Io non voglio parlare di Italia, non si parla.
Okay.
Benissimo. No.
Is that all you wanted to say?
No, va bene.
Yeah. Well...
No, we used to say when I was coaching, if we had the after-match function... before the game, would win a lot more.
Were you saying something about promotion relegation? Was it something about promotion relegation? Because that's what I wanted to ask you before.
Yeah, no, seriously. The trouble is, when I said before, the Northern Hemisphere don't care about us, right? They care about big money at the Six Nations. They care about their Heineken Cup. They care about their club competition. They need promotion relegation up there because Scotland were one of the teams that stopped World Rugby. That means that Fiji suffered, Samoa suffered. If they had promotion relegation up there, then they are going to have to get better. They have been average, like Italy have, and Italy the same. The politics in Italy are terrible. They just need to sort their rugby out. And promotion relegation would do that because it's $65 million a year that they all get TV rights to play in that competition. Georgia versus Russia last year, 60,000 people in the stadium. Give them a crack. Promotion relegations for Six Nations, bring it on. Then Scotland, we're going to have to sort their stuff out.
And we are seeing these other teams come to Rugby World Cups and be competitive. Well, we're not the only thing on Sky tonight. Millions kicks off, first time here in 2020. It kicks off at 9:30. Follow us. It is on Soho. Make sure you check it out. After us, though, stay with us. I had a light bulb moment, though. I was watching the Super Bowl yesterday, and I was watching what was a fantastic show, an unbelievable halftime show, but the contest was something special. But I'm talking about, I want to save some time in the game of rugby union. Their extra point, the clock stops after their touchdown. Why can we not do this in rugby union? The fact, you think about the weekend at Eden Park, there was 9 tries scored. You think about that, that's probably somewhere between the vicinity to 7 to 10 minutes of game time we could save, because don't we want more action? I don't want to sit there and watch someone kicking at goal, chewing into the game. Just my thought. We'll discuss that after the break.
Welcome back. And how about this? Returning to Super Rugby.
Real general, and he knows what he wants.
His experience coming back, you know, his hunger and drive, like you mentioned before, to be competitive.
He's a champion, a Chiefs man, who knows how to win titles.
He's Chiefs to the bone, very smart man, does his work.
I made the decision to come back and play Super Rugby.
Cruden with a weaving run.
To rediscover the enjoyment I have for the game.
One of the architects of their brilliant success back in 2012, 2013.
Also on the paddock, like, just provides so much bloody calm and leadership when you need it.
Cruden now running in a bit of space. Beautiful ball away to Stevenson. That is magic. Back they go. Cruden with the drop kick. It's over. Oh, cool as you like.
For me to come back into something that I know, something that I love, play with a team that I'm very passionate about, I feel very lucky to do so.
A fantastic post-match chat he was. Made my job very easy. Crocky, you've played with Aaron Cruden. It was great to see the little general back out there. Was that any surprise to you, the impact he had on that game?
Not at all. Cruden, he's always, you know, been a classy player, classy human being, in fact. But, you know, you think about his journey, what he's been through, going over, having some really tough moments over in France, a lot of pressure, huge pressure in big games, you know, from the club and all sorts of drama. So for him to come on in a Super Rugby game being down, he would have loved that moment, you know, and he would have been thriving in it, and he did. You know, he came on and he loved that toughness, and he just delivered. And see him step back into the pocket, do the right thing at the right moment.
He looked in complete control. That is something the crew, that the Chiefs were looking for, and now they've got it. Not forgetting the fact Damien McKenzie is coming back. Time for us now to go to extra time. Some of the things we quickly looked at from the weekend, and I looked at this hit on Sia Khaleesi. Looks as though he's going to be out for 4 to 5 weeks, Kane. And you know, to me, it was Ricky Riccitelli. It was from the Hurricanes, and I'm not sure. I mean, was this? Do we see this as being legal? Do we see any issue with it? I mean, I know Sia's going to be out, or was this just literally part of the game?
Well, it looked a little bit late. I remember watching it too, and you can see him limping there. He's very sore. And player welfare is a big thing, and it isn't just about the head and looking after head. You've got to look after everywhere. And if a TMO looked at that, and if they did have a look at that, which they didn't, I think they may have... I think Crocky disagrees.
Anyone have an issue with it, or...?
Oh, I hate it. I hate that.
Oh, I see.
Targeting the knee like that,
I mean, a grass cutter, we talked about it, JK, was the fact that you're seeing it quite often. The guys are going low, you know, in the spirit of the game or not?
Not in the spirit of the game. It's late.
Not necessarily the low, exactly, JK, the late.
Okay.
No, it was late.
Something I wouldn't like to see. I suppose that we have got this affiliation though too with Sia Khaleesi. The fact that he was such a wonderful leader. Had him on the show last year. He was fantastic. Don't like to see that in the game. Another thing that's been talked about is the fact, should captains on field have the opportunity to have referrals? We see it in the NFL. The old flag goes out, the coach's challenge. That happens quite often, and I think these are opportunities to see whether or not... Oh, look at that. Wouldn't you love to see your captain, though, JK, have an opportunity, and a cricket, of course, there's a TMO. Should you see, or the opportunity to go upstairs for a captain once or twice in a game?
Totally, yes. I agree with your kicking conversion thing. I agree with this. The coach should have one and the captain should have one. Why not? Let's trial it. Yeah, well, you know, it's interesting. Rather than spend 25 minutes on a replay in Eden Park the other night.
Well, when they're key moments, Crocky, the fact that you know as players sometimes you see something or feel something or you know that something has happened, so important, the fact that you get these decisions right. Would it be beneficial to the game?
I like it, and I think the fans would like it too. You know, they're brought into the moment. So, yeah, I think give it a go.
Yeah, well, other sports are trying it, and the most important thing we see out of the referral system is referees are getting stuff wrong. See it on the cricket, see it on the football, you're seeing it, and they're getting reversed because of that challenge, and that's good for sport.
I would say this, though, week 1, JK, you, in this show, The Breakdown, have not mentioned the referees once.
I'll just ask you, can you tell me about those, because that's making me nervous. Can you tell me what that means on the breakdown?
Oh, these here?
Yeah.
Well, you got 5 seconds with the yellow card, red card, just please stop. Just finish. You are done. All right, the other thing I want to talk about, TMO in the stadium. Talk about the fan experience that happened at the Blues at Eden Park. We were there, JK. Crocky, the fact that all of a sudden the information that is happening, the discussions between TMO and referee, being on the loudspeakers, positive thing?
I think so. Once again, it's including the... It's improving the experience for the people at the ground. You know, being able to hear what's going on, understand the moment. JK, you mentioned it the other day.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. My problem was the length this time. I mean, are they seeing what we're seeing? Because I reckon we need human error. The players make human error, every single one of them every game. The refs do it as well. Challenging is fine. Same with the TMO. Make your decision a bit quicker and back yourself. You're going to get it wrong, and we just need to accept that.
Well, I think it's great in the way it brings the fans. The fans, we always talk about, they understand what is going on. Doesn't happen just on the field as well. Kirsty, you were at Eden Park and the Blues franchise at Eden Park itself. They're trying to bring different aspects of entertainment to the game.
Well, it's so important, isn't it? When you think of sport, there's 2 things. You want to feel emotion and you want to be entertained. And that's what the Blues did, or they tried to do anyway over the weekend. They had a brass band playing and it was really difficult to actually...
You were right in your element here. You were right in your element.
They were playing bangers, I tell you. Don't Stop Believing was on while I was trying to talk there, but there was also a sideline bar that you can sit on and watch the game, which was amazing. Crusaders, they always do it really well. Their halftime shows, juggling, it's amazing. So now the challenge is out there. Dunedin this weekend and Hamilton, how do they do it?
The challenge is on for everybody. We talk about the product being as best as you possibly can. It is on for everything. So great to have everyone with us on week 1 of The Breakdown. Next week, new All Black coach Ian Foster is in studio. Gentlemen, JK, I know you are not going to miss that. We started with some 2 props. Looking forward to next week to see who is here. Kane Hames, Wyatt Crockett. So great for you to join us on The Breakdown. Enjoy the action of Super Rugby this coming weekend. It is going to be a great weekend. Enjoy it. We will see you first up in Dunedin. The Highlanders taking on the Sharks.